Imagine waking up every morning knowing that you no longer have to rush off to a job that you dread. A job where you have to ask for permission to take time off or approval to go on a needed vacation as a grown man or woman. Because rockstars, that's really what you're doing when you're submitting that form for vacation approval. You're asking for permission from your boss. Instead, I want you to envision a situation where you have the freedom to spend time with your family, to pursue your passions, and to live the life of your dreams. This rockstars, it isn't a dream, it's a reality. And with what I'm gonna share in this video, you can achieve it in just 90 days if you follow this strategic plan. That said, here's how I did it, and here's how you can do it as well. Welcome back to the Rockstar Academy, and I thank you so much for your loyalty. We have a lot to cover, so let's jump in. Now, before I get into it, let me just declare that there's absolutely nothing wrong with having a 9-to-5 job. Sometimes we have to do what we have to until we can do what we want. But what we have to accept is that most 9-to-5 jobs will not allow you to achieve financial freedom in your lifetime. That's because you're trading time for money. And to make the kind of money that's required to achieve financial freedom, you need to be able to get your money to work for you, as well as you need to figure out ways to be earning 24 hours per day, not just within the 9-to-5 time frame. Now, this plan, it took me about 90 days. It can take you 90 days as well. But it can also take you 180 days or 365 days or even 3 years. It all depends on how aggressive and strategic you are, because it's not going to be easy. It's going to require some amount of sacrifices, but considering what we're working towards, I think it's worth it. It definitely was worth it for me. No, I actually loved my 9-to-5 job. It was in outsourcing. I'd been doing it all my professional career, over 20 plus years. And I'd been making a US 6-figure income from age 25. So I could have continued on that path and worked for another 25 years. And when I get to 65, I would have been okay. But rockstars, as you know, we don't do normal, we don't do okay. We want exceptional, we want phenomenal, we want amazing. And that demands sacrifice, especially in the short term. While working my 9-to-5 job, I had several businesses, as I've shared in many other videos here. But I wanted to pursue entrepreneurship full-time and launch several businesses that I know would have taken up a lot more time. And I also wanted to write my memoir, which I actually did. Hence, no regrets, just lessons. So around age 25 was when I made the decision that I would retire by age 45. And I started to put things in place to achieve that. So when I started to work at the last company I was with before retiring, I was around 35 or in that region. And I said I would have worked until I was 40 and then launch my own businesses so that I can be comfortable by 45 and just do what I want, whether it's to operate my businesses or just get up every day and water my garden. Well, I planned to stay for 5 years, but 7 years later, I was still there. And at the 7-year mark, I felt that I was ready and I was planning to resign later that year. But then my son got sick, as I've shared on my other channel, and I needed to be with him. So that hastened my resignation to a few months earlier. Now, with all that happening, I had to create an exit strategy, and I had 90 days to do it instead of the 180 days that I had planned for based on when I decided I wanted to resign. And rockstars, resigning earlier was one of the best decisions I could have ever made, because I was able to spend the time with my son and go full blown as an entrepreneur. Since then, I have had such a great appreciation of what it means to have the kind of freedom that allows you to spend time with family. And everyone should experience that. So while what I'm about to share with you will not be a walk in the park, I will share the actual strategy that I used. And as long as you have the mindset and know that you're going to make short-term sacrifices for long-term gains, you'll be able to do this as well. So I've broken this down into a few steps. So let's get started with step 1. And in step 1, we're going to determine what I refer to as your survival number. The first step to quitting your job is to understand your financial needs. What most people will do is they'll come up with an arbitrary number and say, oh, I need $8,000 a month, or I need $10,000 a month to keep living. I do not recommend that, rock stars. You need to find your break-even point, which is the minimum amount of money that you'll need on a monthly basis to cover your basic and especially your needed expenses. And this is where some sacrifice is required. But remember, you'll be able to create excess later on after you have fired your boss, and all these income streams that I'm about to share with you are bringing in the kind of money that you yourself never thought would be possible in your lifetime, because that's what happened to me. So to determine your survival cost, you can use a budget. And I have a budget template on my website, OdettaRocketCar.com, that you can use. If you're a Patreon club member, you get free access to that template, or you can use a budget template online. What I want you to do is to make a list of all your monthly expenses. And I'm going to go through some of those expenses here, and I'm going to use some hypothetical numbers because my numbers were much higher. But again, I've been used to making the kind of money that would allow for higher monthly expenses. I'm trying to make this more aligned to reality. Now, your monthly expenses will obviously depend on where you live, but I'm going to give you some examples here that you can use as a guide. Now, first on the list, you have to live somewhere. So that's your housing. And we're going to include in this bucket your mortgage, your rent, and all your utilities. And $1,500 to $2,500 per month is within reason for most of you watching, because the majority of you live in the US, Canada, and the UK. In Jamaica, it can be less. Just work the math based on your reality. In Africa, in India, obviously it's going to be less as well. Transportation. This includes your car payment, your toll, if you have toll, or your taxi cost, your petrol, your insurance, your maintenance. We're going to assume about $800 for that expense line. Food, which includes groceries and dining out, we're going to assume $700. Healthcare, it's necessary. This includes insurance premiums, doctor's visits, and medication. Let's assume $600 for that. Again, the reality may differ depending on where you live. Entertainment, your movie, concerts, sports events, whatever it is that you do for fun, let's assume that's about $200 a month. Your kids' education, if you don't have this, this is an upside, but I'm assuming about $1,500 a month, because we're thinking either high school or public college or something related to your kids' expenses. So not just education, but their expenses. Your personal care, which is hair, nails if you're a woman, a haircut, and otherwise if you're a man, I'm going to assume $200 for that. Clothing and accessories, another $250. Travel. If you need to go out of town, use a rental car, stay in a hotel, $200. And if you have pets, and you need to go to the vet and so on, let's assume $50. Now that's a total of anywhere from $6,000 to $7,000 a month. Again, yours may be lower depending on where you live. Now for simplicity, let's assume the median cost for survival of $6,500 per month. And this is your gross survival number, meaning what you need to be financially independent. Now we're gonna drill down to find your net survival number. And that's step 2. But before we go there, let me just declare again that I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just here sharing tips with you based on my own experiences. So if you do make decisions based on what I'm sharing, you do so at your own risk. Let's move to step 2. This is where you need to take that gross survival